Sandy is upending presidential campaign schedules, too, as President Obama canceled stops in Ohio and Virginia and Colorado, while Mitt Romney canceled stops in Virginia and New Hampshire. Wall Street Journal's Washington bureau chief Jerry Seib joins us from Washington for the latest update in the presidential race. Jerry, good morning.
Morning.
So let's actually focus on Ohio. It's now neck and neck there. There was a 10-point gap or something not too long ago. What happened?
Well, most polls still have President Obama ahead by a couple of points. There was one over the weekend that showed it even. It's closer. That's what you do know. I think both campaigns think that President Obama still has a slight advantage in Ohio, which is crucial to the overall electoral college math, obviously. So the question is, does the president maintain a slight lead, or does that poll over the weekend that showed it even tell you something about momentum in Ohio? Not clear. The one thing that you know for sure is there's going to be a lot of candidate time and a lot of candidate dollars spent in Ohio in the last 7 days of this campaign.
Indeed. And speaking of Ohio, the auto bailout is a key issue there, given all of the auto production parts companies that are in Ohio. But Mitt Romney's actually running a commercial that's trying to really flip on its head what the president thinks is an advantage of his own. We want to run that commercial quickly.
Who will do more for the auto industry? Not Barack Obama. Fact checkers confirm his attacks on Mitt Romney are false. The truth? Mitt Romney has a plan to help the auto industry. He's supported by Lee Iacocca and the Detroit News. Obama took GM and Chrysler into bankruptcy and sold Chrysler to Italians who are going to build Jeeps in China. Mitt Romney will fight for every American job.
I'm Mitt Romney, and I approve this message.
Jerry, the commercial mentions that Obama took it into bankruptcy, but I think Mitt Romney obviously wanted a prepackaged bankruptcy as well. I mean, what do you make of that commercial, Jerry?
Well, what it tells you is that the reason that Mitt Romney has had a hard time catching up in Ohio is the fact that the auto bailout is relatively popular in Ohio. It's held the president in good stead, and particularly the northern tier of the state, where there's not only the Lordstown auto plant, but lots of auto parts plants. And this is an attempt by the Romney campaign to fight back. Democrats in the UAW are quite annoyed by this ad, particularly because of this implication that Jeep is going to be somehow moving operations to China. There is a conversation underway between Fiat, which is Chrysler's parent, and Chrysler and Chinese manufacturers to set up a plant there to service the Chinese plant. At the same time, the UAW and Democrats are pointing out Jeep is also investing more money in its plants in Toledo and in Detroit, and so there are going to be more jobs in Ohio at the same time. So, there are a lot of conflicting claims and counterclaims about the auto bailout. I think the heart of the matter is that this is the one thing that's held President Obama in good standing in Ohio. It's one of the reasons he looks better there than in some of the other swing states. And a lot of the last week is going to be to try to attempt by the Romney campaign to try to cut into that.
Mm-hmm. And as we've said before, Ohio is particularly important for the electoral math for Mitt Romney. Jerry, briefly before we end, I wanted to ask you about the jobs report on Friday. Is it going to come? How big is that for the campaigns, or is it coming too late? Are undecideds basically decided at this point?
It's probably not going to be a huge factor unless it's a real shocker. I think the general state of the economy has kind of been baked into the cake at this point. There was a modestly good economic growth figure on Friday. It should have been good news for President Obama. No particular indication it moved anything. I'm not sure that a marginal move up or down in the unemployment rate or a good number on jobs creation is going to change a whole lot of minds. Might create some final impressions, might add to closing arguments on one side or the other. But I think most political pros think that the voters' view of the economy is now pretty much established, and not much is going to change that in the last few days.
Jared, do you have a sense for what kind of impact Sandy could have on the election? For voter turnout, things like that? Could it have an impact?
Well,
or is
it could have an effect on the margins, but everything on the margins in a race like this counts. I mean, it's probably a bigger problem for the Obama campaign because it is much more dependent than the Romney campaign on getting people to go out and vote early. It's counting on a big early vote to lock in some of those votes from parts of the electorate, poorer voters, minorities, younger voters who are hard to turn out on Election Day itself. If this storm, and it probably did, cut a little bit into early vote efforts in places like Florida and Virginia in particular, then that might have an effect on the Obama campaign. As I said, it's an effect in the margins, but in the margins matters in a close race.